Hi, my name is Basil, and for my Year 11 History Sack, I'll be delving deeper into the topic of US prohibition. Prohibition was the legal prevention of manufacturing, sale, and transport of alcoholic beverages within and throughout the United States. In this video, I'll be covering why prohibition is enforced, the difficulties it faced, the influence of organized crime and figures such as Al Capone, and the effects it had on the American society. Why was prohibition enforced, and who was in favor of it? Prohibition was largely enforced and supported due to various religious organizations believing that less alcohol consumption would decrease the amount of crime and raise the overall amount of piety in America. Furthermore, the enforcement became largely favored by women, as a resounding 94% agreed with the abolishment. Professor Andrew Sinclair, a historian of the University of Melbourne, mentioned, "Most women during the 1920s voted for prohibition of alcohol due to the prevention of physical and sexual abuse at home as a result of intoxication." However, he juxtaposed, saying that even though the majority of women were in favor, a small number of women, predominantly the flappers, did not agree with this abolishment, as they themselves were consumers of alcohol. Nevertheless, it was the support of major religious and social movement groups such as the Anti-Saloon League, the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and even the Ku Klux Klan that eventually won the country's favor, resulting in the US Congress ratifying the 18th Amendment on January 29, 1919. Why was prohibition difficult to enforce? Initially, the first 3 months of prohibition was quite successful. The then President Woodrow Wilson stated in a New York Times article that the streets of Washington have become sober and the glee of women could be heard all around the nation. However, this nationwide feeling of contentment did not last long. The American public simply could not part ways with their beloved alcohol. Many citizens found loopholes around the act, and as the 18th Amendment clearly stated, only the manufacturing, sale, and transport of alcohol was illegal, so drinking an alcoholic beverage leading to intoxication was totally not against the law, meaning police could not legally arrest those who were drunk. This leads to the popularity of speakeasies, which were underground selective clubs that sold bootlegged alcohol. In New York alone, there was an estimated 32,000 speakeasies open to the public. The US government uses strategies such as poisoning the alcohol and enforcing prohibition agents to decrease the illegal activity. However, the poisons were chemically removed and the agents were bribed or killed. Prohibition also opened the doors of organized crime, which leads me to my next point. Who was Al Capone and how did he influence prohibition? Born in 1899 in Brooklyn, New York to Italian immigrants, Alphonse Gabriel Capone, more commonly referred to as Al Capone or Scarface, went on to become one of the most infamous gangsters in American history. Capone's actions during the Prohibition period led to organized crimes such as bootlegging and moonshining to become a multi-billion-dollar business within America. When asked by press why he sold the illegal liquor, he replied by stating, "The country wanted booze and I organized it. Why should I be called a public enemy?" By 1925, Capone became the boss or godfather of the Chicago mob, and with this came a notorious reign. Capone used ruthless violence to deal with his rival Chicago gang. Most famous example is 1929 St. Valentine's Day Massacre, when 9 members of the rival Bugs Moran gang were swiftly gunned down by the Capone's men. By this time, Capone's influence had affected the nation's economy significantly, as billions of dollars were spent on prohibited alcohol. Historian Richard Hoffenstad expressed that Capone and his criminal empire had no signs of stopping. However, Elliot Ness, a US federal agent, was finally able to stop Capone's bootlegging after arresting the boss for tax evasion. How did prohibition come to an end, and how did it shape the American society during the 1920s and 30s? The utopia the American public dreamed about was now fading. Instead of increasing morality and reducing the crime rate, prohibition enabled crime syndicates to run ever-growing criminal empires. Furthermore, the corruption of public officials and widespread disrespect of the law pose a serious threat to the US government and its citizens. US economist Milton Friedman mentioned that making prohibition work is like making water run uphill. It's against the laws of nature. However, the key factor that forced the government into reinstate their laws on prohibition was the Great Depression. Even the dire economic situation facing the nation, the federal government had to allow tax revenues from the production and consumption of alcoholic beverages. On the 5th of December 1933, the 21st Amendment, which repealed the 18th Amendment, was ratified, conclusively ending the nation's ban on alcohol. Ultimately, prohibition was a social experiment that eventually led to chaos within the United States. It influenced the creation of many mobs which are still prominent today, and up to $18 billion worth of tax revenue was lost, eventually leading to 1 in 4 jobs being terminated. As the Godfather himself said, prohibition made nothing but trouble for the Americans.